as they're in the meeting so that we can have just the beautiful sound of my voice coming through and nothing else. All right, perfect. I have a little thing to read because we're doing these virtual meetings. It's for the safety of our staff and residents. So welcome to the commissioners, county staff, applicants, and the community members who are joining us remotely. We are legally authorized to hold this meeting based on the governor's executive orders, legislation adopted by the Virginia General Assembly, and the county board's continuity of operations ordinance adopted in March 2020. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few specifics to orient everyone to our new virtual environment. Audio is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. For those joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. Turn off any sound to any devices near you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon located in your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you, and if you're dialing in by phone, please press *6 to unmute. Commissioners, if you wish to be recognized to speak, please raise your hand or use your video to otherwise signal. Community members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak if you did not pre-register. Be advised that a 3-minute limit for both individuals and organizations will be in place for public comment, and the meeting chat is only active for presenters or commissioners in need of technical assistance. It should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about the agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Lastly, this is a public forum. All information associated with today's meetings, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act. And now that I have read you all the Riot Act, we can begin. So as I said, my name is David Tim. I'm the chair of the Tenant-Landlord Commission, and I'm excited for today's meeting because we have a lot of really substantive things to get to. But before we really get started, I wanted to acknowledge that we have a lot of new members that we've been welcoming over the previous months, but specifically this is Eric Wimbush's first meeting as a public interest representative, and I wanted to, Chris Wimbush's first meeting, and I wanted to welcome him to the commission right before I totally called him the wrong name. We've had a couple of conversations, and other than this particular mishap, nothing has gone that badly yet. So welcome, Chris, and thank you for joining us on this commission. I'm just going to do a brief call to order. So will the commissioners please just, I'm going to go through your names and just let me know that you're here. Bisma Ahmed.
Here.
All right, thanks. Nicole Merlene. All right, I'm just looking to see if she's in the...
No, she isn't.
I don't see her here today, so she may be absent. Kristen Clegg, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, Emily Camardo.
Here.
Thanks. Elise Hayes.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Elise. Kirat Mukherjee.
Yes, I'm here.
Matthew Whitfield.
I'm here.
And last but certainly not Eric, Chris Wimbush.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. We're excited for what you'll bring to the commission. I think, Rolda, do we want to take a second to approve the meeting minutes from last time? I don't see that on the agenda, but I know that we do typically do that right about here.
Yes, we do. Sorry.
All right, fantastic. Well, the way we go about this for new members is we everybody has gotten a copy. All the commissioners have gotten copies of the minutes from the previous meeting, and if there are any edits that you wish to be made, please just raise your hand, and then you can make a comment about the minutes, and we can get it changed. All right, I will very quickly move on if no one raises their hand with edits, which is looking like that is the likeliest scenario, which is totally fine by me. That means that we're going to move next to public comments, and I believe, Roll, that we have 2 speakers. Is that right?
We do. We have David Ayala and Ed Prashant. And I think they're both here. So
Great.
let's get started.
Yeah, let's get started. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes. I think that either Hector or Rolda will probably put up a clock on there. No pressure. If the commission has any comments for you after you speak, then feel free to respond back and forth to comments directed to you. So why don't we go with who was first? David?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Yep. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Ayala. I used to live in Arlington. I moved out in March of last year. And I just wanted to speak today because I, Ed, and other people were tenants in the same unit. And I have only received half of my rental deposit back. I have not received the other half yet. And I've been in touch with my landlord. My landlord has been very evasive, just kind of telling me like, oh, we'll send it later. And he's been non-responsive at times. And I just wanted to speak today to see if maybe there is something that can be done. I know I've looked into it, and it looks like you can sue in small claims court. But my bigger concern is that my landlord and my former landlord is doing this to other people. I know there was another former tenant who is actually going to court this week because he also did not receive his security deposit back. And it looks like there are current tenants of that building who think that they're worried that they might not receive their security deposit. So I just wanted to just share my story and see if maybe there is something that can be done. I know going to court is one option, but maybe there's like a government body that we can report our landlord to, or some other recourse.
Okay, well, thank you so much, David, for coming to us. The TLC in its charter, one of the primary things that we do is try and help with grievances that between tenants and landlords. And luckily, we have really great landlords on here, as well as people who represent tenants and public interest, and everybody has good perspective on this. And I see Kristen. I was hoping for you. So go right ahead, Kristen. You've got comments.
All right. Hi, David. I'm Kristen, and I am a landlord. And I have a few questions for you. The Virginia landlord tenant law says that the landlord is required to respond within 45 days of the move out to provide you the inspection of the unit. Did you receive that document from your landlord?
No, I actually texted my landlord the week that I was moving out, and I requested a meet in person, and he said that he would. He told me to just give the keys to the new tenant, and he said that he was gonna his accountant was gonna mail me my security deposit, and so we never did the inspection, and it's been well over 45 days, and he never gave me a reason as to why he would keep my security deposit, never gave me a list of damages, none of that.
Okay. So you said something that's very interesting to me. You said that he told you just to turn the keys over to the new tenant. May I ask, did you do what's called a lease revision, where your name was dropped from the lease and Bob's name was added to it? Or did your lease actually come to a termination, and meaning yours, the entire apartment, come to a termination, and those residents sign a new lease without your being any party to it?
So I moved out 2 days before my lease ended. My lease was supposed to end at the end of March of last year. I moved out the 28th. So 2 or 3 days before end of March. And the new tenant's lease, the new tenant took over I believe in April of last year. So we were on separate leases.
Separate leases. Okay. All right. And no, there was no other party who remained in the apartment. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was just I was living by myself. There was one person.
Okay. Well, based on what you've said, you not receiving the notice of the status of your apartment is a violation of the Virginia landlord tenant laws.
Oh.
So you should definitely reach out and get some support. And I see that Bugatti is on the line here, and they would be a great resource. There's also Virginia Legal Aid. I can't tell if they're on the line or not. But there's some good people there that can help you craft the right letter and documentation and cite the right part of the Virginia landlord tenant law that tells you, tells your landlord that you're serious and you know what your rights are. And they will also most undoubtedly want to see your lease to make sure that there aren't some provisions that go along with the Virginia landlord tenant law that we here aren't aware of. But 45 days they should have communicated with you. It's
Thank
the
you.
law.
I forgot to add one more thing. So I would follow up regularly with my landlord, and this is all through text message, so I do have screenshots. And my landlord did pay me half of my deposit back through Venmo, the app, in August, and he explicitly said, like, this is the first payment, like we'll pay you the second payment later. Like, so he paid me half, so I still need to get the other half back, and he has not been very responsive. And I texted him, the last time I heard from him was last week, and I asked him about my second half of my deposit, and he told me that he was let go from the company due to COVID and to contact them. But as to my knowledge, the building where I lived, was owned by his family. So him, his mom, and his sister. And it looks like there's an LLC involved, which looks like it's their company, might be what they use to manage the apartment. But I asked him, when he responded, I asked him, like, who can I contact? What's the company name? And to date, I have not received a response from him.
Okay, thanks so much, David, for your public comments. I think that we've got Bugatti on the line. If they can reach out directly to David to provide him some resources to help with this, I think that would be fantastic. But I don't want to take too much time on just one speaker. So I believe there's another speaker. Rolda, can you tell me who's next?
So there's actually two other speakers, Dharma Wilson, who is also another speaker. And Dharma, could you just turn the camera off until we call you, please, if you don't mind?
Actually, if she's next, we can just go right to her then.
No, for her, we do have someone else. It's
okay.
Ed or David Ayala. Is that
okay?
Person?
Yeah, it's Ed Peckett.
Okay, Ed, go ahead, please.
Yep, go ahead, Ed.
Hi, so I'm David and I are friends, and David was the tenant, and I moved in after him. So I am moving out soon. I'm leaving the lease early, and under that I forfeit my security deposit. So I'm not really worried about that. But we've just had other issues in the building, and it's all from the same family. Like, can I just say the family name?
Yeah, please tell us. Is it you said there's an LLC involved?
Yeah, it's 1241 North Utah Street, LLC. I was consulting with a lawyer through LSNV. Without even saying the name, she says, "Is this Ibrahim Abdullah?" And I'm like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" So this is, in effect, a well-known slumlord in these parts. And him and his family have a litany of entries in the court, both civil and criminal. It's both abundant and it's pretty entertaining. But the point is, our grievance with the tenants last month was over the washer dryer. It was busted for a month. A lot of us don't have cars, and they just drag their feet for a month to repair it. And we were considering, but you know, their MO is to extract as much as possible and give as little as possible. That's why they don't want to pay out security deposits. Why should they if they can just keep the money? So in any case, we really had to compel them to fix this washer dryer, which is why I went to legal services in Northern Virginia. And we were ready to, Meredith McKay was advising me. I think some of you may know her, but in any case, we were going to use this a tenant assertion form, in which case we deny them payment if they didn't fix this washer dryer. They did fix it last weekend. Like, we had to pull teeth, but after like 3 or 4 tenants ganged up on them, they did repair it. There are other outstanding issues. The refrigerator on the top floor doesn't work too well. I've told some of the other tenants in the building about the tenant assertion form, but now we have some people moving out, and they're worried about getting their security deposits taken too, in which case they might want to have recourse to the tenant assertion form, so that they never actually pay for their last month's rent until their security deposit is returned.
Okay. Ed, thank you very much for your public comment. I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who has his hand raised. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi. First, David and Ed, I'm so sorry for the experience that you both have had. I'm curious, how many units are at play in this particular building? I think you've mentioned at least an upstairs unit, but I'm curious how many folks, how many units are there in the building?
So it is a duplex, and there are, I believe, there's 2 floors plus the basement. There are 2 units in the basement, so 2 separate units. I believe one of them is 2 bedrooms. The other one is a studio. The 2 other floors, I believe the first floor, the ground floor, has 3 bedrooms, and I believe, but I am not sure, that the second floor has 3 bedrooms as well.
Okay. And David, you might know this. Do we have contact information for through the enrollment through the public comment sign up process? I don't want to have anyone give their personal information on the call and recorded, but I do want to make sure that we have both David and Ed's contact information so that we can follow up directly, or our county staff can. But in addition to you all going to legal aid, I do think this warrants some additional follow-up after this meeting on performance of this landlord. So do we have that contact information, or should we maybe provide staff's email to make sure we have it?
Yes, we do. I have the sign-in sheet and the contact information, so we can.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you, David and Ed, for your public comments. We will, marshal our resources, including, our contacts at Legal Aid and Bugada and other organizations, and get back to you and see what we can do about this. Thank you again for bringing it to our attention. I believe we have one more public comment, Dharma Wilson. So please feel free to go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thanks, David, for hearing us.
Thank you.
Dharma, you're up. If you're no longer there, then we're going to have to move on because we're on a pretty tight schedule.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Hi.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. Okay, I'm following up. I'll be very brief on a previous complaint that I had as a new tenant in my location. I had an experience that I think your committee had said borderline on civil. So what I did was I contacted and I did an online police report. And from there, because of the COVID, there were restrictions on having anyone come to follow up and help do an investigation. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I ran into some loopholes that really cost me financially. Because of the online reports that I did file, I wound up getting a bill for $153.95 from the Department of Health because they send down people and along with a police guard to follow up on what's going on in your residence. The only problem is that this is the normal occurrence, I was told, and I don't understand why I had to pay the bill. And no one has been able to follow up with me. I paid it because I didn't want it to go into collections, to tell me why I was billed for what their department is supposed to handle. So I was hoping that maybe the committee could chime in on that and give me some idea. It has been paid. And then the next thing I wanted to ask about was, I overheard about eviction moratoriums and about rent programs. And I was very curious on the Kojo Connect series on WAMU. They spoke more about applying for the federal assistance. I went online, I didn't hear anything else. I didn't see anything else about it or anything about it. So I wanted to ask for more assistance in learning about that. And then I also wanted to give a big shout out to our fire department, because there is a program called the Home Fire Safety Check that they perform on residents. And even if you're a renter, you can call them up and they'll come in and really check the security of your rental unit. And like in my case, I had an expired smoke detector, and they're not responsible for it. But if you're a homeowner, they will provide it for you. But as a renter, they will not leave you in the open. But it's the landlord's job to make sure that all smoke detectors are up to par and are not expired. And like I said, the fire department will gladly do that for you. You can call them up and they'll come to your home, whether you're a renter or a homeowner. So I just wanted to share that with you, because they actually walked me through as a single woman that's living alone. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but they walk you through the area so that you know your evacuation processes, where your fire equipment is, and how to quickly get out in case there is a fire. So I wanted to give them a big shout out, and that's it.
Perfect, right on time. That was 3 minutes. So thank you for your comments. I'm sorry to hear about the issues that you're having, and I'm not sure precisely what the law is with the bill, and I think that the part that we can potentially look into is why you received a bill when you weren't told that you were going to get one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk with staff, and we will actually, looks like Elise might have some insight into this. Go ahead, Elise.
Hi, David. So I actually have insight in regards to the rent and mortgage relief program once we finish with her request with the bill. I'm not familiar with that.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think we are going to be discussing some of the we're going to be discussing some of those programs later on in the main discussion about the 2021 work plan. So why don't we just hold that comment until then, Elise? But I think in the meantime, unless anybody has any commissioners have any specific advice about this bill that Dharma received, then I think we're going to move on. And Dharma, you just have to trust that we'll follow up with you.
No problem. Okay, thank you.
Kira, do you have something to add?
I just was going to say I'm not sure exactly what the bill was for, from what I heard. So could Dharma say again what the bill was for?
It was for a visit. The actual notation says that it is a ES emergency intervention.
Okay. Well, I think Rolda, can you make a note of that? And if you have Dharma's contact information, is that right? You have her information?
Yes, we do, and we can follow up with her and get some more information and see how we can help her.
Fantastic. All right, excellent. I think we're going to, unless there are any outstanding comments, speak now or forever hold your peace type of thing, we will move on to the first presentation we have today, which is on the relocation guidelines. I'm very excited about this presentation. I know we've had a couple hiccups recently, which, we're working through it, and we'll get there. But Hector Mercado is going to be presenting on this, and I think it'll be especially instructive for many of the new members that we have, and a good refresher for those of us who have been here a little bit longer. So I'll turn it over to you, Hector. Go ahead.
Thank you. What we'll do is we'll have a basic overview of the relocation plan, or what is relocation. To start, we're going to say about the relocation, the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Act, that it's the federal program that helps relocation. Basically, this is a law that establishes standards for any program that it's federal, and any project that will require that they be acquisitions, or they impose eminent domain in properties, or any kind of displacement of owners or renters. In these circumstances, the owners get some assistance or payments for moving, and if the owners have tenants, the tenants are the ones that receive the assistance. This applies when properties are acquired, they are remodeled or rehabilitated, or they're going to be demolished for new construction. Under each one of these circumstances, they have different timelines, timeframes, or what they have to do. For example, if it's going to be a demolition, that will imply that it's a permanent relocation, and the requirement, let's say, for example, it's a notice of 90 days. If it's going to be a rehabilitation, basically that it's a temporary relocation based on the URA, and these will only need a 30-day notice of 30-day notice to the tenants. So basically, the federal government has a relocation plan. Every state or county has to follow it. The only problem is that it only applies to federal programs or projects. Now, because of that, the county developed relocation guidelines. Since we can't mandate the relocation, we have adopted what is called the tenant relocation guidelines. And these set standards of what apartment complexes will do if there is a relocation. These guidelines apply when there is a rehabilitation or redevelopment of the properties, when there is conversions of rental housing to non-residential use, when there is demolition of the property, on when it's going to be sold, and when the property is sold, they ask for an empty building. Now, these guidelines are basically voluntary for every developer, unless they are asking for something from the county. Let's say, for example, they need a site plan. Under the site plan condition, they will be obligated to have or follow the guidelines. Other way they can follow they have to follow the guidelines is under zoning ordinances, under the form-based code. For example, they want to develop in a specific area, and because it's an area that it's established for development, they have to accept and do the relocation plan. So based on that, we have the general requirements that developers have to follow. In all these projects where they have to do a relocation plan, the first step is to communicate what they are going to do to the tenants, so the tenants can be informed what is the conditions that they're going to have, what are going to be the assistance, and what it's going to be done to the complex. Then the developers will do a relocation plan. This basically is they express the intent to the staff of the county, and with our help, they follow the relocation guidelines and develop what we call a relocation plan. Other requirement, this is a state requirement, is that they provide the tenants with 120-day notice to vacate. So basically, all the tenants have to receive a notice saying that they're going to be relocated and they have 120 days to move. A lot of complexes use this differently. Some complexes time it so they want all their tenants to stay the 120 days in place. Other developers may decide they want the building empty before the 120 days. In cases like that, for example, there was one complex or one developer that did give incentives to people that were moving earlier. And the earlier they move, the bigger the incentive. Other developers, in order to maintain or keep, they were saying you can leave early, but if you leave early, you will receive less than what you will receive at the end. So developers, depending on what they are, their intentions may vary on the 120-day notices, but by law, they have to give that time frame. Also, they have to provide relocation assistance. This relocation assistance is helping tenants finding property or a place that will take them under the same conditions or close to the same conditions. And also will help with moving expenses. Under these moving expenses, we consider the use of trucks, moving companies, the cost of moving utilities. So all that is in that part. And once they start with the relocation plan, they provide regular reports to staff to indicate how the relocation is going, what are the issues they are having, and what else they may need. Now, in the relocation plan, we have certain guides or timelines of what they have to do. Basically, we have determined that a relocation plan from beginning to end to the approval of the plan will take a period of 4 months. In the first or second month, we ask the landlord to notify the tenants of the situation and what's going to happen. We also ask they survey the tenants. This is done via interviews, and the other purpose of this is to determine what are the necessities of each one of the family groups. For example, we want to find out if their families were school-age children or if they are seniors. And if that's the case, the idea will be to provide the best locations or information so they can move closer, so they wouldn't have to, for example, change the schools for their kids. Also for the elderly, if we can find properties or places that will help them or will be more convenient for them, is always determining what will be the best for the tenants. Now, these sometimes could be done at the beginning. It's done usually that way when the owner is the developer that's going to do the property. In some circumstances, though, this cannot be done at the beginning. We had a few cases where the property was going to be sold and the owner didn't want the disclosure of the sale to the tenant. So this is something that could be done later on if the property is going to be sold. They could be done after acquisition. Now, and after that, basically the owner or developer will contact the staff, and with staff and them will develop a relocation plan. They will also put a timeline of the development. This timeline, for example, helps us determine if it's a temporary relocation, how long the tenants are going to be away before they can return to the property. So sometimes they have 2-3 timelines depending on conditions or hiccups, because you never know when you're doing construction. So once the owner develops the relocation plan, they give it to staff. We review the relocation plan to verify that meets all the requirements of the relocation guidelines. And once it's verified that it complies with it, of course, is back and forth between developers and staff until it's done. Then we consider that a final draft of the relocation plan. Once it's that, basically we'll make sure that there is a summary of the plan, basically an idea of what the complex is, how many tenants live there, what is the status of the tenants, how many elderly, how many families, how many singles, how many kids. There is an idea of what the changes will be after renovation. For example, if they are going to just change the interior of the units, or they are going to be more in-depth work. It's an explanation of what the basic changes will do. Then the plan also have to indicate what it's being done to retain or keep the majority of the tenants in the same property, or in some cases tenants want to move to different places, or they may not want to return, but we prefer if they return, and that's always what they are looking into. Then also there will be an idea of how they are going to implement the relocation, how they're going to help the tenants, what will be the conditions, how they are going to return the deposits, how they are going to help them with the moving of utilities in renovation. Sometimes, depending on it, will be different on what they do, and all that will be explained on the relocation plan. We also have what are the communication that it will exist with the tenants, with staff, and it will also be determined if tenants may need assistance to pay the difference in rents if there is unit. This is done via the tenant assistance fund. Sometimes we can determine that tenants that are being relocated may not be able to pay the rent in the new units. Therefore, this is something that it's prepared, so they will receive some assistance in making up the difference. Of course, this will be discussed later in the next presentation in more detail. Okay. Now, once the final draft is completed, the landlord or the owner will do a tenant meeting. The requirement of the relocation guidelines is that this meeting be at least 2 weeks before the presentation of the plan to the Tenant Landlord Commission. During this tenant meeting, they will be notified of what the relocation plan is, what is the general outline of it. They may be provided with a draft or a summary of the relocation plan. Most of the time, they are giving a summary of the relocation plan because a draft is not the final one. And they answer the questions of most of the tenants. They are also informed that the plan will be presented to the commission in the next meeting and how they can go and put their concerns to the commission. After that, the Tenant Landlord Commission will have the first meeting. They will receive before the meeting, not immediately, but way before the meeting, the final draft of the relocation plan so they can take a look at it. And during the first meeting, there will be a presentation of the plan by the developer, and they will answer all questions of the commission. Now, at the same time, the commission can make recommendations of changes to the plan. For example, if it's something that it's not clear to them in the relocation plan, then the commissioners can ask the developer to make some changes or be more clear on their explanation or outline. So even after this meeting, the commission will have time to send their recommendations to me, and then I will compile everything and send them to the developer so they can make changes or updates to the draft plan. After that, in the following month, there will be the second meeting. During this second meeting, the commission will check the plan again. If they have more questions for the developer, they could ask them. But it's mostly to see if the developer has implemented the recommendations of the commission. If that's the case and commissioners are satisfied with the draft of the plan, then they will proceed to vote on the approval of the relocation plan by the commission. And if the commissioners vote to approve the plan, then the commission can recommend the approval of the plan to the county manager. Now, the county manager receives and reviews the relocation plan, receiving also the recommendation of the Tenant Landlord Commission, can issue a letter of approval. Now, the county manager may approve it, but it's generally the approval by the designee of the county manager. At this time, the designee of the manager for the approval of the plan is the director of the housing division. Of course, the county manager always holds his approval. If he wants to do it himself, he can do it, or he can design or assign somebody to do it for him. He is notified of the approval of the plan too at the same time. So once the letter of approval is issued, then the landlord or the developer, it's free to issue a 120-day notice to vacate. And these 120-day notices will start the relocation process. then they can create a tenant priority list. The tenant priority list has several functions. One of them, for example, is determine if the place is demolished and a new construction is, and they are giving the options to the tenants to come back, then in order to be fair, it's a priority created. Now, the priority will receive some points depending on certain conditions. For example, if you're elderly, you receive a number of points. If it's a family, receive a number of points. Depending on the age of the children, you receive a number of points. If you have been in the property for a long time, you receive a number of points. And this point system helps you be first or second on line and successively. And if it's a new development, the first one, for example, decides, oh, I want to live in this unit, or I want to live. So that's the reason of creating a priority list, so everybody will be treated fairly. Okay. Now, staff receive monthly reports during relocation until the end of the relocation, and until the last tenant has moved out. If the property is, for example, following a site plan, the site plan will require some kind of permits, and those permits will not be issued unless staff determines that the relocation plan is completed, they have followed all the rules, and everything is done to the county satisfaction, and they have followed everything. So once staff verifies that they have done all that, they will issue a letter of completion, and with that letter of completion, then the permits will be given to the developer to continue. So until then, we have any option to update or review or do anything with the developer to help the tenants.
Okay, and Hector, I think we're running out of time here in the meeting. Is there a way you can wrap up in the next minute or so?
This is it. Basically,
okay,
you have the timeline here in what it is, a small graphic. You will be receiving this PowerPoint, so it is, and the responsibility is that basically the landlord develops the relocation plan, the tenant works with the landlord, the county staff ensures that the relocation, the developers meeting everything, and the tenant-landlord commission make sure that the plan will be to the satisfaction and help the tenants. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Hector. I think we're going to just jump straight into the next presentation unless there are any pressing questions. I know that commissioners might have some questions, but I think, we're on a pretty tight schedule and this is a full meeting. So unless somebody has something really urgent, I'm going to turn it over to Eric. Okay.
Okay, thanks everybody. And I will jump right in and try to share my screen with my PowerPoint. All right, tenant assistance funds. You saw these mentioned briefly in Hector's presentation. So tenant assistance funds are short-term rent assistance programs for low-income households who experience rent increases due to county involvement in creating or preserving CAFs, committed affordable units. A tenant assistance fund is attached to a particular CAF project. For example, one just finished last year at the Berkeley, which is now known as the Apex. Buchanan Gardens a few years ago had one. So there, I'm sorry. Oh, never mind. So there won't always be a tenant assistance fund in every relocation plan because not every relocation plan is preserving or creating the committed affordable rental units. So the rationale for TAFs is that as the county helps to create or preserve CAF rental units, the rents for any existing tenants may actually increase. That could be counterintuitive, but it can happen in the short term or even in the long term. And this can happen for two reasons. Number one, the tenants may have to move off-site during renovation or construction of a new property. So that's what happened at the Berkeley. The Berkeley is in the Apex now, located down by South Memorial Run, South Glebe Road. And the Berkeley was bulldozed in 2017, and the Apex has been built. Folks who were living at the Berkeley previously, there were 138 units. They had to move. They're welcome to come back to the Apex. Many of them are, but obviously they couldn't live there during the construction. And while they lived off-site, they were probably paying higher rents. Rents may also go up if existing rents in an acquisition were under 60%. I'm on hold.
Are you still there?
Yeah, it told me I was on hold for a moment. Okay, so the rents can also rise, and it looks like I lost my screen too. The rents can also rise if the existing building wasn't priced at 60% AMI. So 60% AMI is the most common rent level for affordable units. So for example, right now that's $1,417 for a one bedroom, $1,701 for a two bedroom. Well, there are some buildings in Arlington, that don't have their rents that high. So when they're acquired and they become CAFs, those rents may actually rise. This happened at Buchanan Gardens, for example, when APA purchased it some years ago. So I'd like to show an example of how the math actually works. So this is an actual family at the Berkeley in 2017. Their rent was $1,474 a month. The adults both worked. They're earning $50,366 annually. During renovation, they moved. Obviously, they leased somewhere off-site, which was close to the Berkeley, and the rent there was $1,830 a month. It was not a CAF unit. So the tenants paid the same $1,474 because they were in the TAF, and the Tenant Assistance Fund paid the remaining $356 for the duration of their time while they were off-site. And then they did move back into the Apex last year. And there they resumed paying an affordable rent. The program is sliding scale, so the tenants will pay the greater of 35% of their income toward rent, or the rent that they're paying prior to the renovation or prior to the acquisition. Mm-hmm. So if they were getting a great deal on rent and they were paying less than 35% of their income, they'll pay again the greater of 35 or what they were paying before, which is why that family continued to pay the $1,474. So this is not intended to be a program that alleviates rent burdens. Okay, if that $1,474 in the previous example was a burden for that family, TAF is just intended to allow them to pay that same rent. If that rent is a burden to them, then there's other programs, as usual, other things they can do in hopes of paying less rent. But TAF itself just keeps them whole and makes sure that they're not going to pay more. The time limit on a TAF, they're short term, so they last for the duration of the renovation or construction plus 12 months. And after that period, the tenants do need to pay the full affordable rent. So after they move back into the Apex, for example, households can still participate in the TAF if that affordable rent is still, higher for them. But after 12 months, it does end. And so at that point, again, they need to be looking at different things, perhaps rent assistance, increasing their income, looking for a lower level affordable unit in that property, something like that. Households with Section 8 housing choice vouchers or housing grants are not eligible to participate because they have rent assistance already. And projects involving federal funds will trigger the Uniform Relocation Act rules, which provide for very similar rent assistance and therefore eliminate the need for a TAF. And the question comes up, this is my last slide, the question comes up, why bother having a TAF when the county does have other rent assistance programs? Why don't they just get a housing choice voucher, or why don't they just participate in the housing grants program? Well, it's difficult to get into the housing choice voucher program. That's used to be called Section 8, because they have a long wait list. Housing grants are function differently because, for one thing, they have a lower max income allowed. The max you can be earning to participate in a TAF is 60% of area median income, but in the housing grants program, you can't be earning that much. It maxes out at 42.5%. So everybody earning between 43 up to 60 can get into a TAF, whereas they could not get into a housing grant. Also, housing grants have more restrictions. You have to be a working family or 65 or older, or a person with disabilities. And also, housing grants has an assets limit, which I believe is $25,000. If you have more than that, you can't participate. TAF does not have an assets limit like that. And also, TAFs are time limited. The Section 8 voucher program and housing grants are indefinite. TAFs are time limited, as I said, so it's less of an eventual financial burden on the county. And like I said, for a family who finds that even the affordable rent is a burden to them, again, they could apply for the housing voucher program, and the wait list does move, so perhaps in a few years they'd be able to get in it. They could see if they qualify for a housing grant. And also, many of these properties do have units that are set to be affordable at a level lower than 6% AMI. 60, like I said, is the most common level in our CAF projects. But there are 50% AMI units out there, including at the apex. So some of the lower income folks from the old Berkeley have moved into 50% units at the apex, and then their rent is actually lower than it was even at the Berkeley. So those are my quick slides, and I can take questions.
Thanks, Eric. And before we get to questions for you, I saw, Chris, that you had a question perhaps for Hector about the relocation plan. I want to give you just a second to ask it, as long as it's not going to be something long. I think we're going to have to cut some things in the agenda today because we're running out of time, but go ahead with that question real quick.
I can, I frankly have a couple of questions, and so I will forego them. I guess my hand up, I don't know if it's possible to have Hector back in particular the next meeting. And I know I'm also new, and so I don't know if we can maybe bump out the amount of time, because I do have some questions, but no, we need to continue to move forward. So
here's what we'll do. Hector's with us every meeting. So, and we can also, if you have specific questions, that are detailed, you can reach out to him via email or perhaps get on a phone call. If there's something that you think would be, edifying for the rest of us, then feel free to ask that now. Otherwise, I'll open it up to commissioners who have questions for Eric.
I will forego my question for now and reach out directly.
Thanks. Kristen, go ahead.
I don't have a question for anyone in particular, but will we get these two presentations emailed to us? Or could we, so that we could look at them more carefully? They're very valuable. Really great.
I can do that, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we can manage that with both presentations.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other raised hands, what I'm going to do is, all right, Chris, go ahead.
I will take it. One question that could be helpful for all is, are there any recommended changes to the assistance program that you think are worth talking about, or any issues that might need correction for the future? I think that's going to be my role, and so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on it without making county policy.
Okay, I can go first to answer that. For the TAF policy, no, I think people are content for now. There were many different ways of operating TAFs until 2013, and then the county created a TAF policy which standardized them to make sure, how long would they last and how much would people pay and that kind of thing. And then the county reviewed it in 2017 to make a couple changes that had come up. And I think people are content with it now. I'm not aware of anybody requesting changes to it.
Right. Thanks, Eric. I hope that answered your question, Chris, for now. But if you do have other questions, we can definitely coordinate, an email chain or a call.
Thank you.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much, Eric and Hector. Those presentations were fantastic and very informative. What I'm going to do, since I'm the taskmaster trying to keep us on schedule, we have the Virginia Poverty Law Center article where they have two different laws. One's a law and one's a amendment. And I think what we're going to do is we're just going to skip those for today and move them to the next session, because I really want to get into the work plan, and I know we don't have very much time left here. So I was able to speak with just about everybody except for Elise. Unfortunately, we weren't able to link up before this meeting about commissioners' priorities for 2021. I realize we're just a tad late to the game in approving it. We probably would have liked to have done that in December for the 2021 year, but where we are where we are. So those conversations were really fantastic, and I thank you all for your feedback regarding those things. What I've done is I have worked with Rolda and staff to put together a 2021 work plan, and you should have gotten that attachment. Rolda, can you actually put it up, or Hector? Actually, I could probably do it if you guys don't have it handy.
You got it handy. Did it come up?
I don't see it, but I can do it myself. All right, can everybody see this here?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, so obviously we're in February right now. The March meeting is what we're looking at next. I hope everybody's had a chance to review this previously. What I really tried to do with this work plan was integrate everybody's concerns in. Everybody has different priorities, but I think there's a lot of overlap. And so, for today, I wanted to open it up to commissioners for a brief discussion about what you see and what you don't see in the work plan. It's very possible that I didn't understand exactly what you wanted out of our conversation and didn't get perfectly translated into the work plan. So I'm going to open it up first to commissioners who have who don't see what their priorities are in the 2021 work plan. And actually, I can't see the attendee list if you're raising your hands because I'm sharing right now. So if you've got a concern or a comment, then just shout it out.
Okay. Just in general?
Yes. Well, I mean, I've had specific conversations with everybody, right? So
Great.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Oh, this is Dharma Wilson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dharma. This is not public comment here. This is just
sorry.
Commissioners.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so commissioners.
Yep, this is Chris Wimbush.
Chris.
I think the topics that are laid out reflect certainly my priorities, and I think issues that are of considerable concern to folks with respect to both tenants and landlords. I guess it's a very meaty set of topics per meeting, and so I know we've discussed the potential for subcommittees to do to maybe be able to do some of the prep work or to have additional topics. And so I think my only concern is, again, not my first meeting as a commissioner, but not my first meeting, is that these topics may exceed what is possible to recover in substance in an hour and 15 minutes. And so I think that's really my only concern at this point, is that these are, we could spend, just the next meeting aside, we could spend the entire time talking about the eviction moratorium and the impact of COVID on both landlords and tenants. So I think my concerns are, that my only concern is just whether or not we can cover these topics an hour and 15 minutes with enough detail to make them useful discussions.
Totally agree, and that is why we are discussing subcommittees today. I think we're going to end up going over time. I'm sorry to everybody who likes to get out of here exactly on time. I'm one of those people as well. So, but in regard to subcommittees specifically, I've discussed reviving the eviction subcommittee with a number of you. And so why don't we do this first? For the eviction subcommittee, why don't we, if you're interested in being a part of that, just let me know. You don't have to make much comment beyond saying that you're in. And we will revive that and send around an email to discuss exactly when we want the timing of that particular subcommittee meeting to be and the frequency. So why don't we just go around the horn? I saw, Nicole, that you have joined late, so let's just make a note of that, roll the thanks. And Bisma, are you interested in joining the eviction subcommittee?
Yep, you can add me on there. Thank you.
Great. Nicole?
Yep.
Kristen?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Hear it.
Sorry to do this, but I need to ask you a question. The last time I wasn't on the eviction subcommittee because we had another different subcommittee that I was on. Are we going to do it?
I'm having a lot of trouble.
I'll say yes then.
Okay, thanks. Matthew?
Yes.
Chris?
I care deeply about preventing evictions, but it doesn't seem productive for us to basically create a committee of the whole.
Okay, yes.
So I say
that's
no.
my concern.
In the interest of having other subcommittees, perhaps, but.
Okay, well, so we are considering other subcommittees as well. Rolda, can you remind me what the other subcommittee? I think we were discussing another specific subcommittee, and it's in my notes here somewhere.
We hadn't fully decided, but the housing discrimination is always another one. And then I thought we left it open for any other suggestions. But those were two subcommittees that we had formed in the last year and a half. So if there are topics that fall under housing discrimination and people will be interested in, that's another option. But
okay,
open to continue.
So why don't we do this? I think there was another idea for a subcommittee about COVID specifically. It would be doing a retrospective, looking back, and also looking forward towards the end of the moratoriums. I think that's actually part of the eviction subcommittee, but is there any other subcommittees that commissioners are interested in forming besides the eviction and the housing discrimination subcommittees?
Hey, David, it's Nicole. When we had talked, I think that one of the things that I wanted to work on was that item on just ensuring that current laws were able to be easily accessed by renters and trying to figure out what similar jurisdictions like Alexandria, Fairfax are currently doing that we are not. To aid in that process. So if that would be a committee, I think you have it on the July item. If I think that I would like to help lead that, but if others would like to join me, that would obviously be great too.
You're referring to the renter grievance dispute resolution. So I think that we could consider a subcommittee for that. So what I think we should do is we've got these three potential subcommittees now. We're definitely raising eviction, most likely doing housing discrimination, and then we'll have this grievance dispute committee. Are there any others? And then what we'll do once we've decided on these particular subcommittees is we will pass around or request that commissioners write in to us, to staff, to say whether they'd be interested, and we can form the subcommittees more specifically at that point after the meeting.
David, this is Chris Wimbush. I have a suggestion. I was one of the folks that raised the COVID retrospective and lessons learned. And what I would suggest perhaps is if we could charge, maybe slightly modify the eviction committee, subcommittee, to maybe at least have COVID and analyzing COVID response efforts and the impact of COVID on the rental market as part of their charge. Then I don't think it's necessary to have a separate COVID committee, because I do think the moratorium, the eviction cliff is going to be the most pressing COVID related issue. But if that subcommittee could take on some of the sort of broader COVID, how well did the county respond to COVID from a housing perspective, then I think the housing discrimination subcommittee and a subcommittee dedicated to taking a look at our grievance processes would make a lot of sense to me, and I'd support that, those three committees or subcommittees.
Are there any other comments on other committees, subcommittees that we might create besides those three that we've discussed then? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Of course, we can always create subcommittees at will going forward. So if there's something that rises to the top of mind that we think a subcommittee is necessary for, we can bring it up then. I think that I see we're at the end of time here. We're going to go for a little bit longer. I want to ask again about if there's any priorities that I've missed in our conversations. If you don't see those in some substantial way in the 2021 work plan, what I want to do at the end here is vote on approval of the work plan. So let's have discussion about that if there's any further comments. And just go ahead, because I can't see anybody right now.
The one thing I'm not sure where it's covered is, can you hear me? It would be the collaboration with other committees, and especially the Planning Commission, because I know that we want to be involved in site plan review, because those are usually projects that involve us later on. I know I was on one, and Kristen was on one for Fort Henry. And I think that, it might be good to have somebody from the planning side to talk to us about what's coming down the pipeline, or tell us a little more about their process in the early stages of projects.
Yeah, that's great. So what you're asking, just to clarify, is for the planning committee to send a member to our commission,
or even planning staff. The commission or staff, whoever's appropriate.
Okay. Why don't we do this?
So can I ask a question here? Is it that we want planning staff, or do we want housing division staff who are aware of projects that are in the pipeline, which is sort of different? Kristen is on a very specific project, which has, because of the size of the project, and it's a largely for all affordable housing. So yes, she is. We have a Tenant-Landlord Commission member, but the Planning Commission member, that's very different. So do you just want to hear about projects that are coming on?
Yeah, I was thinking similar to what Hector just presented, which is kind of overview. It might be good, especially for new commissioners, or even for myself, to get a refresher, but for somebody to go through their process, their entire process at the beginning of a project, how it gets assigned to a site plan review, when it goes to the planning commission, when it goes to the county board, when there's a relocation plan, like an overview of the way they work, because not all of us necessarily know that, because we haven't sat on their commission.
Okay, we will certainly look into that.
Okay, great.
So
And
can I just clarify? Sorry, I know we're. So it sounds like there is both a topic of wanting to have an overview of how the development moves to the planning commission, and then a second question around whether or not we'd have someone who's monitoring the planning commission. Is that the right way to think about it?
I wouldn't say that. The overview is the entire process, and then there may be specific projects that are of interest to the Tenant-Landlord Commission, which, they would rise to a higher level. In other words, those can actually be presented to the Tenant-Landlord Commission, because there are lots of projects taking place. Of course, some of them more pertinent than others in terms of housing. So getting the overview, I think that's probably what you can start with. And then as specific projects develop, you can get more information on those. That's what I'd like to suggest anyway.
Thank you.
okay, yeah, thank you, Rhoda, and good question, Chris. All right. Yeah, I mean, so I'm in favor of us coordinating with staff to see, if people have interest in, bringing in a liaison or like sending out a liaison. I know there are specific other commissions that have spots for us, and then there are those that don't have spots for us. So we want to be mindful of that as well. Rhoda, can you remind me which commissions have spots that we can be liaisons to? I know it's SIDSAC, and there's at least one other.
Well,
Housing?
SIDSAC was actually the only one where there's a designated spot for Tenant-Landlord Commission. I can check with the Housing Commission and also with the Human Rights Commission if those two commissions are seen as, relevant to the work that we're doing.
Okay.
So those are the suggestions that we come up with.
Why don't you do that, and then we'll follow up with a short agenda item in March on that.
Okay, so just to make a suggestion, in putting together this work plan, I was very mindful of the time that we're working with in terms of an hour and a half, and actually our meetings are an hour and a half, and they're from 7 to 8:30. Mindful of it in the sense that I thought we would have one presentation if possible, and so it allows for some discussion of the presentation questions and people get a better understanding of what's going on, as opposed to having too many items in any one meeting where we have to rush like this. So just providing that information, caveat.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so it sounds like, let me ask again, are there any other comments on the 2021 work plan that we haven't covered yet?
So I think the only other item on here was the commission's visibility, and that we can weave through the various presentations maybe, or we can spend, some portion of a meeting kind of brainstorming in terms of how best to do that. So that was just one other area.
Yeah, and I know that was a concern among a lot of the commissioners. I think the other option that we discussed was, creating a subcommittee devoted just to the visibility issue. We want to encourage public comments, and we also want to be able to, share resources that the TLC has access to, especially, in light of some of the comments just today in this meeting about the moratoriums and other COVID-related relief issues. Does anybody have a perspective on whether a subcommittee is the best way to do that? I'm undecided.
Oh, sorry, David, I'm raising my hand and I forgot you can't see me.
Yes, let me do this. I'm just going to stop sharing. So go ahead, Kristen.
So I had two thoughts. The first is that I think that we should move the VRLTA 101 to sooner rather than later, because it helps us all if in fact we do get some resident or tenant complaints. Make sure we're all understanding the VRLTA. That just, I know the schedule is very tight, and I don't mean to undermine the the affordable housing master plan, but we've talked about that so many times that maybe we could swap those two. That was going to be a suggestion.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Does anybody else feel strongly about that? Maybe we could bump up the VRLTA to April and move down the affordable housing master plan to May.
Sure. Well, you know that's my passion, so I was just pushing for that.
Yes. Chris, go ahead.
And I think it makes sense to move it up. My only question is, would moving back the affordable housing master plan review be consistent timing wise with any further county action on the plan? I just don't want us to miss out our opportunity to weigh in on it, but I certainly agree that there's a ton of value in having sort of the 101 session, so to speak, like what we had tonight, sort of front loaded in the year, certainly for my benefit, but I imagine for the benefit of many commissioners. So I'm supportive of that move, as long as it doesn't take us out of play for the consolidated plan process that is ongoing.
That's a good question. Rolda, do you know whether there's a timing issue with the affordable housing master plan?
No, I think even around that time we should be okay. I had chosen April because, yes, a lot is happening right now in terms of the review. And by the way, this is a review, and it also includes a report of the 5 years. In other words, what was achieved over the 5 years, and going forward, this is an opportunity for the public to comment on any updates, revisions to the goals. So no, I think pushing it back a month, we should be fine.
Okay.
So my own question would be the General Assembly session update. That's not critical in any way? Is it okay to take that off entirely, or in order to accommodate or the switch, the change that is being proposed? Okay, we can rework this, but I think what it means is, I'm not sure if we then have to send it out and people would agree, because at this point we are making some changes.
Yeah.
And also note, this is Chris Wimbush, that some of these topics could be, since now we have a sense of the subcommittees, could be subcommittee topics. It could be taken off the agenda, altogether. If, for example, with the General Assembly piece, we decide we want to focus on eviction action, then that might be more appropriate for the eviction subcommittee. So I would support maybe waiting to approve the plan to make another round of edits based on this great discussion, and then approve it with an understanding that we move forward with what's been docketed for March, so that we can still move forward with a meeting. But happy to approve now if we think we're ready as well.
Okay, Kirit, thoughts?
Just a quick thought. I'm not necessarily speaking for them if they're still on the line, but we normally at some point during the year have a Bugatti kind of annual report, and I didn't see that. I don't know whether
Great point.
they're going to present that by email nowadays because it seems like we're under more time restrictions than we used to be when we met in person. But I mean, I just point that out.
That's a great point. Why don't Bugata? Why don't we get in an email conversation? We'll send out revisions to the work plan following this meeting once we sort out the dates. And Bugata, we can easily have some sort of presentation more towards the end of the year, which is a little bit lighter. Yeah, go ahead, Bugata. Whoever we have, I'm not sure.
Hi. This is Nori with Bugata. Yeah, we're happy to continue the presentations that we do for the yearly reports. Just let us know ahead of time and we'll gladly present.
Great. For now, Rolda, why don't we plan on something in the September, October realm? I know we're leaving those a little bit open because things will come up inevitably, but let's sidle it in right there for now. Are there any other comments on the 2021 work plan before we move on and close here today?
So just for clarification, what's the decision is that we are going to revise this and send it out, or is there going to be some kind of provisional approval identifying the changes that have just been recommended with regard to April and May changes and inclusion of Bugata? Is that primarily?
Yes, let's do a provisional vote, and I'll do that. I'll do that along with a vote for approval of the meeting minutes, and then I think we'll be at time, unless there are other things to discuss in the last few minutes we have here. Is everybody okay with that provisional approval?
Is the provisional approval just to add Bugata, or was it also to
also to move the VRLTA up to April and the affordable housing master plan to May? Right, Rolda? Did I get all that right?
Yes, that's the suggestion. Mm-hmm.
Great.
And then there was also a comment about whether we needed to keep the General Assembly session where it is. How does that affect anything going forward? Or was this just an update in terms of?
What
is that not important? Can we take it out?
What did we have planned? Was someone going to present on that, or was it just a discussion internally?
Well, I thought Kurt had offered to follow the bills and to provide an update. I think that's perhaps that's what we meant there.
Let's keep it on the agenda. And that's the only other thing on May right now. I know we'd be moving. I think let's just keep it for now, and we'll see what we can do to keep it on.
Yeah, and I would just second that. I think that's an important thing to keep on and not move to subcommittee and allow for discussion or alternative suggestions to the update that we're getting.
Agreed. Great. Okay. Any other comments? I'm having trouble hearing you, Kirit.
Yeah.
So we're going to say we're just going to try to add on later the planning commission date.
Yeah, I still had some trouble completely hearing you, but it was a comment about the planning commission.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
No.
A little bit.
Yeah, I was just asking about whether we're going to add on later the planning commission overview.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Rolda, can we I know we're planning on moving a Bugata presentation in September or October, whichever month we choose for Bugata, which they can have they can pick. let's do the other one as a planning commission update. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Hearing no outraged comments, I'm gonna say that's what we're gonna do. So noting all of the provisional changes that we've made to the 2021 work plan, I'm gonna do a roll call vote here. So BISMA, provisional approval for the 2021 work plan with noted verbal changes. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Nicole,
Yay.
Kristen,
Yay.
Emily,
Yay.
Elise,
Yay.
Kirit,
Yay.
Matthew,
Yeah.
and Chris.
Yay.
All right, and I also vote yay, so we have unanimous consent on that. And we'll just go straight, we'll go back the other direction for a roll call vote on approval of last month's meeting minutes. And I think we didn't have any comments on that earlier in the meeting, so let's have that vote now. Chris?
Yay.
Matthew?
Yeah.
Kirit?
Yay.
Elise?
Yay.
Emily?
Yay.
Kristen?
Yay.
Nicole?
Yeah.
And Bisma?
Yay.
All right, and I also vote yay. Okay, fantastic. Well, I know it was a tight meeting, and we had to make some time crunch compromises, but I really want to thank everybody for a good meeting, and I am definitely looking forward to us getting into the meat of the work plan rather than just discussing the work plan itself in the months that come in the future. So thank you everybody for joining the February meeting of the Tenant Landlord Commission. And unless there's any other closing comments, I'm going to tell everybody good night and thank you.
Good night, David. Good night,
All right.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kristen. Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a good night.